All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in the spirit of brotherhood.
It's New York City, 1908, the garment workers' strike. 15,000 women are marching for voting rights, shorter hours, and better pay. It's February 28, 1909. The United States honors this strike in the first National Women's Day. It's Copenhagen, 1910. Clara Zetkin seconds a proposal for International Women's Day, so that each year, women will have the chance to speak their demands. The decision is unanimous. Over 100 women from 17 countries vote. No date is chosen, but in 1911, on the 19th of March, more than 1 million men and women in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland rallied for the right to vote, the right to hold public office, the right to work, the right to vocational training, the end of discrimination on the job. From 1973 to the 1990s, women in Chile fought daily. Their grassroots movements, much like our movements, inspired hope for equality. In 1997, I went to Take Your Daughter to Work Day. My mother pointed at the pictures on the wall and asked me what I noticed. All men, she prompted, listing off names belonging to broad shoulders and mustaches. I said, no, Mom, look, because there she was, in that row of men wearing stiff suits and stiffer smiles. My mother's smile was broad, her sliver of a figure taking up next to no room in the shot. But she stood there. When I pointed, she smiled down at me, told me she was lucky to be where she was, but it wasn't luck. It was 1920 and the passing of the 19th Amendment. It was a 1971 Supreme Court decision. It was 1999, Il Constitución de Venezuela. It was history, and then her story, and now my story. It was not luck. It was voices and footsteps and picket signs and hard work, and it was my mother, ever humble in her strength, fighting the system from inside that system, and now it is me. In 1997, I stared up at a picture where my mother saw suits, ties, and broad shoulders. I saw only her familiar smile slicing through all of them. And until every daughter gets to wake up and look at a picture like that, we need to keep breaking barriers, shattering silences, celebrating, and creating demand so that maybe one day my daughter will look up at a picture of me and ask, hey, Ma, where are all the men?
Thank you so much, Lisa. And it is part of the spirit of today that I would like to acknowledge the presence of Lisa's mother, whose name I forgot. That got you all in the room like we knew it would. Welcome to Lifelines. This is the panel on Lifelines. My name is Abena Abusi. I'm a board member and have the privilege of being the new coordinator of the Women's Learning Partnership, constant reminder of the importance of poetry to liberation and our lives. So, we are going to share some poetry with you related to the issues that we are discussing today. We are just going to perform and read our poems at the beginning of each. Think of us as a jazz band. At the beginning of each set, I will read an article or two which sets the theme. Between sets, first we'll have a discussion amongst ourselves about the value of poetry to our lives and the way it helps us do our necessary work. And then between the middle of the second set, we'll give you an opportunity to ask one or maybe two questions that we can all deal with before we go. And we hope that at the end of it, you will appreciate how very important, how very important our creative lives are to our free and independent selves. And also understand how we are a bridge to the next session on the youth, because I have the, privilege, I guess, of saying that I'm the old woman on this panel. I'm old enough to be the mother and even the grandmother of everybody on stage. And I am happy about that, because it shows that our work is continuing through a group of very, very gifted poets. So there's the grandmother, and then there's one person who is a big sister, and then there are three little sisters. So, Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says very simply, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. And Article 2, that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. And furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation of sovereignty.
This poem is dedicated to all victims of hate crimes and xenophobia in their countries of residence. It's based on events that have occurred in my country of residence. America, the beautiful. When my parents moved to this country, they awaited the warmth of melting pot, but not the burn of go home, spray painted across the first house they thought was theirs now. As a child, I stood beside my mother, holding up grocery store checkout line because the cashier didn't want to understand her foreign-tongued English, just like she didn't want to understand when I shamefully descended kindergarten bus asking, why do they call me the color of ketchup? After all, I was born speaking American. Just like my parents didn't want to understand when my brother and I flew home in the year after 9/11 and told them of the airport security agent who looked at the two of us and said, I have to pull one of you out of line for questioning. You can decide which one. Like my 3-year-old niece didn't understand when I explained, your mom is Indian and your dad is Sri Lankan, so you're both, replying, but I was born in Minneapolis. I'm from This is America, from This is our home, from we have been here for decades, from we're not going back now. I'm from politics being something to discuss at dinner parties, but hide behind learned vocabularies of American assimilation in public. I'm from still feeling like a foreigner in certain places in this country where I would blame myself for being there if something were to happen to me. Over 50 years ago, 4 black children in Alabama were murdered at their church because they were proof of what America could be. Over 3 years ago, 6 Sikh adults in Wisconsin were murdered at their Gurdwara because they were proof of what America still is. In February, 3 Muslim students in North Carolina were murdered in their home because they were proof of what America still is. In June, 9 black adults in South Carolina were murdered at their church because they were proof of what America has always been. A country whose fingerprints are caked with the blood of those it calls other, as it claims to crown thy good with brotherhood. Hoodie, white hood, yarmulke, cowboy hat, do-rag, baseball cap, turban, habit, headdress, hijab. None of these things is more American than the others.
for Jordan Davis and for many like him. Dear beloved, since you don't cook or speak Spanish, I'm sure you don't know that this dish is called moros y cristianos, Moors and Christians. The black beans and rice cooked harmoniously in one dish, and today I am convinced that the Cuban who named it that was being overly optimistic. Do you know how easy it is to forget a pot of beans when you're numb? So when you ask me, did you hear about, and yet another black child's name finishes the question, the only answer I have is, I forgot to lower the heat. That the stovetop stained where the beans split open and pushed out from their skins. The boiling pot sputtering dark water I couldn't bring myself to clean. On this night, lover, as we say a silent grace over plain white rice, I wonder if you, like me, pray for an unborn child. We've already imagined barrel gun shot in the chest. Tonight, no music plays. And for the first time since I learned to cook, I understand a meal can be a eulogy in mouthfuls. Mm-hmm. I refuse to scrub the stove. Some things deserve to be smudged, ungleamingly remembered, because I know now the world is rotting timber and it always sees men like you as a loosened ember, a Lucy, lit and waiting to fall on all the combustible it be. I wonder if I'll be like Sean Bell's fiancé, if like her the night before our vows, I'll dream of your ivory bow tie spotted with blood, wake with the start as bullets whistle death hymns into your flesh. If I'll be tying gold ribbons to my wedding bouquet, singing Ja Legend, nervous, my voice breaking like your bones, and when your picture appears on the TV or my Twitter feed, will it be the only photo in our wedding album? I won't fire the wedding band. We'll leave all the lilies unplucked, make no tourniquets out of bows. Instead, I'll meet you at your graveside, signal the music to start, sway softly to the breeze and hum to the tune of my first dance with your ghost. Beloved, isn't that what this has taught us? That it's not about the heart that stops beating, it's about how we beat those who would stop our hearts, how we keep dancing, how we keep cooking, how we keep selling Lucy's, playing with toy guns, playing our music loud, be allowed to get lost and ask a stranger for help, how we keep walking into stores and out of stores and put our hands up and put our hands in our pocket and put our hands over our mouth when another black body falls. And we keep on, and we keep on, and we keep on. Beloved, we'll keep on sitting across this dinner table with 100 tombstones that haven't been engraved yet filling our mouths. We'll keep on believing that all this rotten won't be the fruit of tomorrow, that there is still a better meal for the two of us.
Hi, everybody. I can't hardly see what I'm writing. Dear Sandra, today I opened a window and it smelled like fall. Today I poured cream into a cup of coffee and watched it bloom. Today the sun shone through the window and the shadow it made on the curtains was every kind of magic. Today, the color of my lover's skin is why I believe in God. This, I think, is what I mourn the most, the no-moreness of simple pleasures, how you will not smell autumn this year, or know that spring is here from the scent of the sky before it's cracked open by rain. Dear Sandra, I hope your life was full of these simple delights. I hope that someone loved you. I hope they kissed your neck. I hope they always gave you the window seat, the last bite. I hope they kissed your mouth in public. I hope they read your favorite books to you out loud. I hope they got you flowers, not all the time, just when it mattered, when they really meant it. An orchid, lilies, perhaps a bouquet in half bloom, to leave room for some opening. I hope they prayed for you even if they did not call it prayer. I hope they told you to stop smoking. I hope you tried. I hope they held your hands. I hope they loved you hard and full and without flinching. But most of all, I hope they said your name. I hope they said your name and the sound of it was a choir, was the string section a perfect harmony. I hope your name was their native tongue, the only prayer they knew, a promise worth keeping. I hope your name was yes, a heartbeat, a deep breath. I hope it was a crackling fire, a child's laugh, a match struck. I hope the sound of your name was wind through the leaves, waves kissing the shore. I hope it was a grandfather clock, the first bite of a ripe peach, a wind chime, the turning of pages, a rolling boil Sandra. I hope your name was a ballad, a blessing, an amen, a hallelujah. I hope the sound of your name in their mouth made you feel like the first day of spring, like you were a garden and everything was in bloom, like you were a seed once and the water and the soil, like you were the sun, the light over everything, like you could make anything grow.
I wrote this poem when the armed conflict in Sri Lanka was coming to an end almost 6.5 years ago. I think it's particularly timely now. This Wednesday, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights will be releasing the results of its investigation into war crimes and crimes against humanity committed during the final years of the war. This is a message of the emergency broadcasting system. This is a war on terror. This is a message of the emergency broadcasting system. This is a war of terror. Hello, my name is Tamil, a minority in America, the largest minority in Sri Lanka. Hello, my name is Tamil, not a terrorist, but in terror, of a country warring, gasping, island of blood, shape of a teardrop. Hello? My name is born in the USA, but if I'd grown in a place where my name and face were enough reason to arrest and detain me, I can't say what peace I'd have faith in today. In 1983, what they called riots, we called Black July. Pogroms in Colombo, when government thugs invaded homes armed with papers that read like voter registration lists. Grandfathers butchered in front of their wives. Families in cars set aflame by mobs. The city, a funeral pyre. This is a massacre. Guilt by ethnic identity, entire villages displaced, detained by a government that told them, these camps are your country. Barbed wire borders until we decide you won't fight back. Decapitated children dangling from jagged fences. Kill them before they learn to fight back. Hello, my name is Heartache. My young cousins in the north learned to play war instead of house, could identify which bombs would drop based on the whir of plane engines. And even my Amma, after being trapped for months, but then safely tucked back into America, would startle at the sound of our neighbor's lawnmower, running inside for cover. Hello, my name is Mourning. For innocence lost years ago, I worked for a Tamil leader struggling to craft a peace with rights. Naively told him I wanted to learn about the conflict. 3 months after he hired me, coworkers and I streamed into the street just after a suicide bomber destroyed him for daring to fight without raising a weapon. Both sides of this war leave behind broken beings, scarred minds. This is a war of weapons, but where the bombs fail to drop, a war of words, propaganda of the powerful. A military spokesman says no civilians were harmed by the army in the attacks, yet the few relief workers and reporters who saw the mercilessly deemed safe zone spoke of thousands of Tamils dying by mortar shell. Hello, my name is Question the government that declares peace soon after killing thousands of its people, then confining more in internment camps. Hello, Yanper Gauri, from a country warring, gasping, piling up people until they become bodies choked by bloody jungle vines, roots grasping for a piece of homeland. Hello, my name is Dear Tamil People in Sri Lanka. This is a plea for justice and accountability. This is a message of the emergency broadcasting system. We will keep trying to reach you.
Like many people of faith who are also activists, you sometimes feel as if there is a war between your intelligence and your spirituality. I'm putting together two poems that come out of such moments. I'm a lifelong Christian, I'm a lifelong Methodist, and I think Methodist hymns are a great gift of that denomination to humanity. Both of these poems were inspired by Methodist hymns. The second one I'll read, Jerusalem in Zion, is very short. From Jerusalem, the golden, and Zion, Zion stands with its walls surrounded. But the first one is a poem called Demonic Arithmetic, which I wrote shortly after 9/11. I was in Accra when 9/11 happened, and we had a memorial service at which the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps spoke on behalf of all the diplomats. In Ghana, in 2001, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps was the Palestinian ambassador. It was a very moving and touching moment, and I was struck by the generosity of his comments given what was being done to Palestinians, not only generally, but also specifically after 9/11 as part of the whole wash of brown-skinned people in the United States. And at that ceremony, we sung a hymn that I love, that we sing a lot in Ghana at funeral services. The words and the tune haunt me, and that juxtaposition of the situation we were in haunted me every time George W. Bush sent bombs into the area. So the subtitle of my poem it's called Demonic Arithmetic, or George W.'s Calculations for the Sins of Al-Qaeda, for those of us who fail to grasp the logic. Now the laborer's task is over. Now the battle day is past. Now upon the farther shore lands the voyager at last. Father, in thy gracious keeping, leave we now thy servants sleeping. How to justify the unquiet death of so many thousands sudden dead? Father, we'll quarry the flesh of hundreds of fathers of Qatar for every flaming and fallen tower floor. In thy, and for every shard of every shattered pane of glass, we'll shell the thousands of innocents huddling in the bomb shelters of Basra, gracious keeping. And though Ben Laden doesn't even live in Babylon, leave we now, for every fragmented body part in free fall will scatter shockwaves of smart and awesome bombs on the 5 million invisible humans haunting the streets of Baghdad. Thy servants sleeping. We haven't grasped the prophecies, dreams, birthrights of promised lands over whose bombed city walls and grave-marked vineyards never-ending rains of blood hold sway. We have made deserts out of Eden by the limits of our understanding, foundering on all banks of the River Jordan. Zion may stand, but dear God, Jerusalem's divided. We thought we'd spend a few minutes talking about why indeed we are activist poets. And so I've asked each of my wonderful daughters to say a few words about what led them to this path and what inspires not only their writing, but the commitment not to keep that writing completely public and about public affairs. So I don't know who wants to start.
You want me to start down here?
Yes, this was your idea, so you can start.
So my name is Lissa Piercy. I'm a spoken word poet, and I also co-founded an organization that works with activist poets, trying to figure out how these poets can earn a living doing their work by connecting them to paid performance opportunities. My poetry journey started after my own personal loss. I lost my father to cancer 7 years ago. And in that same 2.5-year period of time, I lost 6 other individuals who were extremely close to me. And I sort of dug my feet into the ground and kind of decided that I wasn't going to move forward with my life in any kind of positive way, because that to me felt like I was saying that it was okay that my father was gone and that I had lost these people. And in that period of time, I found open mics and somehow ended up co-founding an open mic on my college campus, and just sort of fell into this work of poetry for my own personal healing in a really kind of self-centered way. I was just writing poems for my own work, and I performed a poem about the loss of my father at a college open mic, and someone came up to me afterwards and she said, "How do you do it?" And I thought she meant, how do you share poems about loss? So I started to go into my spiel about, writing and performing and how it's healing, and she said, no. How do you get through every day with a parent that's sick when you're in college? And it turned out that her mother had been diagnosed with cancer, and she was in her first year of college and going through a story that was really similar to my own. And it was in that moment for the first time my poetry became about something other than just me, and became about the people in the room that were hearing and sharing my words with me, and then more importantly about individuals in workshops that I started to teach that were processing through things through writing. And that then it was no longer like a choice to write poems or perform poems. It was more something that I felt like I had been called to do. And it took a while. We talked the other night at dinner about how, taking up space and how as a woman it feels to take up space. And we were asked the question, well, you perform your poetry, and so what made you feel okay about taking up space in that way? And all of us said that we kind of came to performing a little bit reluctantly. But I think the process of being able to own my own voice as a woman and share my own struggles, but then also watch so many students come alive through workshops, is what taught me the importance of poetry. And then I'll close with, most recently, Reverend Sekou, who's been doing a lot of work post-Ferguson, came back to Boston at one point and said there was a Black Lives Matter, we were doing some meetings, and I was like typing up agendas for them and stuff, and he said at one kind of after a meeting one night, he said, you always have to have the poets, because the poets will speak the truth before anyone else will. And that sentence stuck with me a lot and was kind of the reason for building Strength of Doves, and seeing that I, as a white American woman, do not always need to be the poet on the stage that's talking, but there's so many poets who are speaking about such real injustices before anyone else is speaking about those things. So that's what brought me here.
Thank you.
The thing that inspires me the most to continue writing and sharing my thoughts is this notion that there's just as much activism in lifting up the things that I think are worthy, and then that is my only job. And I think it can feel very daunting to feel like I have to fix police brutality or solve homophobia. And instead, all I have to do is say, I see you, and you're great. And it's delightful to be able to identify the world's delights, especially when those delights are humans, and to identify the idiosyncrasies of the human behavior, and to say we all contribute to making this world, and every single person is important and necessary. And so I think that when I write, it's something that brings me great pleasure, and it's something that I feel has an impact, because as a brown girl growing up in the South, I didn't have a lot of people telling me that I was necessary, and so that's what I want to do.
I grew up with a background in writing. I've been writing poetry from probably middle school years, which is probably true of a lot of us. And I also was doing performance as a young person. I would do plays, sing, dance, all kinds of great stuff. What I never did was bring those two things together, my own writing and performance. And I only started doing that about 6 years ago. And at first it was just because I felt the need to do something creative with myself, and it had been so many years since I had. And so it was just for my own, personal growth. When I first got involved, I live here in Washington, D.C., when I first started going to open mics and going to the sorts of events where, my contemporaries are sharing their original work, I became very interested in poetry slams, which are competitive poetry events. And that was right around the time that the armed conflict in Sri Lanka was coming to an end. Now, I was born and raised in the U.S., but I have decades of experience answering the question, what is Sri Lanka? What is that thing? Isn't there a war? So I've been doing that for years. And so now, seeing how a poetry slam operated and what people do at a poetry slam, I just thought, these people are getting up in front of a room full of strangers, and within the span of 3 minutes, they have strangers crying, just completely emotional, breaking down, everyone's losing it. How do they do that? They're just doing it with poetry. And so that poem that I shared earlier, Emergency Broadcasting System, was a poem that I wrote to slam with. And so that was how I initially, approached that. And when I came to slam and came to performance poetry, that was after about 10 years of doing social justice advocacy work, both before law school and after law school. I've been a public defender, I've done environmental policy work, I've done animal welfare policy work. Now I do work relating to justice and accountability in post-war Sri Lanka. But as I was saying to my fellow panelists the other night, what I found writing poems and seeing how they can be received is, I'm so used to spending so much time crafting the perfect language for the press release, or the peer-reviewed journal article, or these things that are going to reach a particular audience that most times is already interested in what it is that you're bringing to the table, or where your angle. And so to be able to get up in front of a room full of strangers and have people come up to me afterwards saying, I care about human rights. I had no idea this was an issue. What can I do? What should I read? How can I get involved? I just think it is one of I think any form of art, but in my personal experience, performance poetry, it is one of the most powerful messaging tools we have, and I can't believe that I went so long without using it.
I was born and raised in New York City. My parents are both from the Dominican Republic. And I'm the only girl of 3 and the youngest. And so I think just that setting was one of the things that propelled me to write. I grew up in a neighborhood where Columbia University was on one side, and the most drug-infested, rat-infested neighborhood was literally the next block over. And so when you're raised in this society where you're looking out and you're like, I can't actually understand how these two things are brushing against each other and never meet. Except for in the middle when like the Columbia kids would go buy weed. They like don't ever intersect, right? And so I think writing for me was, I mean, I've been writing since I was probably 8, and the first poem was like, was about not understanding like violence, not understanding why dolphins don't kill each other, but we do. Like, I was always looking out and trying to comprehend. And so I don't know that I've ever intentionally said this is going to be a political poem or I'm going to be a public speaker about these things. I think it was more so I'm trying to understand the intersections that I reside in, and the only way I can do that is by communicating with other people and seeing if they understand this too. And so I think the stage was a space to say, do you guys hear, like, do you see this too? Like, am I alone? And it's been incredibly powerful. I like to think of these stages as like the window out, right? To look out into the world, I'll perform in spaces that have never seen a body like mine perform. A woman of color with an accent that is both New York and Spanish, that is highly educated but also extremely hood in some senses. Folks have never seen that in Wyoming or Idaho, right? And then I'll go to my block and perform poems about, about hegemony, and they're like, what? So I think it's always the mirror out, the window out and the mirror back is what these stages to me, like what they create, and I think it's incredibly powerful. And I will say, I don't know if this is tangential, but that I think a body like mine performing any poem is always going to be political. I think being a woman of color who is an immigrant, who is accented, writing a poem about love is political. And so in that regard, I don't know that I could ever separate any piece I do from politics.
Yeah, that's so true. You remember me. One of the Langston Hughes poems I always love teaching. There are 2 of them I always do. When Miss Susanna Jones Wears Red and Harlem Beauties, because of his recognition that a black woman's body walking the streets in all her various colors is itself a political act. For me, briefly, I think I was much slower at those things coming together. That is, I've been writing poetry since I was 6. But for the first decade of my life, it was totally private. I didn't share it with anybody, not even my sister who can read my mind, and my father who taught me the love of poetry, who would read poetry to me and so on. But they were the first 2 people I read my poetry to. For me, poetry has always been a way of trying to deal with contradictions and resolving contradictions. I don't want to spend too long, but I find what has happened to me is that I grew into an understanding of the political nature of what I saw as those private contradictions. And that combined with what I do. I'm a professor of literature of people of the black world, and I study colonial discourse. So what I do in the classroom is inherently political work. And so for me, that's what enabled those worlds to come together and empowered me to deal more and more in poetry with the things that I was teaching about, or the work I was doing with organizations like African Women's Development Fund and Women's Learning Partnership. But I'm a slow learner, so it took me a long time to come to that. We're going to continue with the remembrance that Article 6 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law.
So this poem I was thinking about which pieces to do for this panel, and I was thinking I don't have anything about human rights, and I wanted to do something thematic. And it also seemed grossly inappropriate to not do any work or to speak to the Say Her Name in the Black Lives Matter movement as a huge human rights issue that's happening in front of our faces. And so this poem is about the human right to live a long, full life. It was the summer sharks threatened to ruin our vacation, when blood was more than a metaphor, and we did everything we could to survive. We made the kids stay close to the shore, their feet touching the sand, and even that was too far, made our hearts beat fast and loud. On the ride home from the beach, I let the seatbelt push into the soft of my neck and bind one breast because I'd survived this summer, which was a miracle, though it shouldn't be. Because I was alive, which was a privilege, though it shouldn't be. And I know, when I die, I want to be old, with a garden full of collards and herbs. I want my palms to smell of basil when I wash my wrinkled face, to pin a flower from the yard in my hair, my gray hair, to eat a soft meal of potatoes in broth, something easy on the stomach, to blow steam from a cup of tea full of lavender and sweet honey, to lay my head down and know it might happen, to know I might be next, and to go to sleep full and still and ready and not afraid.
As I mentioned, both my parents are from the Dominican Republic, and I visited a lot growing up, and then I went a long span of time without going, and things changed a lot, I think, when you go as an adult to a place that you remember in memory and through your parents' stories. I didn't know at the occasion of where this poem takes place that prostitution is legal in the Dominican Republic, although third-party prostitution isn't, so you can't have a pimp, but you can be a sex worker. And it's fascinating to think about being someone who advocates for sex workers' rights, but then also someone who is deeply confused by a society where patriarchy and race play such a huge role in who prostitutes themselves. And so I think that's at play. Juan Dolio Beach is in the capital, and it's a really tourist beach where a lot of European and Americans go to enjoy the Dominican Republic. Juan Dolio Beach. The white man holds the girl's breast to the sunshine, rubs a thumb across the nylon fabric covering her nipple, squeezes to test firmness, ripeness. Her body is a highway-side fruit stand. She is chosen the same way Mama taught me to pick avocados. Don't stare, my cousin says. It's just a part of the tourism. The girl bats at his hand playfully, not so playfully. I can't tell. It's too far in this area of the beach where I told sand and sip presidente. The man's accent isn't English. The bill's euros and wet as he pulls them from his swim shorts pocket. She steps away. He pinches her ass playfully, not so playfully. I try to think of sex workers' rights as I watch her, skin colored like a bruise, thick patch of sunlight and hair, barely older than the last time I was here at 14. The white man says something into her ear and laughs loud. Her smile is like the edge of a butter knife, and my breath catches. Can't tell if the sweat on my palm is mine or the beer's. My throat becomes a tostonera that presses the words flat. Auxilio, auxilio. The cries from a crowd near the water splits open the moment. The girl runs towards the drowning. The white man doesn't look at her as she runs, and I will his eyes my way to see all I've been wanting to say. But I'm not really a woman from here, so I own nothing that he wants.
This poem was written on the 6th of December 1995. I was in Accra and was invited to represent the Center for Women's Global Leadership at the ceremony at the Canadian Embassy in commemoration of the Montreal martyrs, the 14 women who had been killed by a fellow student for being women at a technical college, because women at technical colleges are feminists and were spoiling his life. I light a candle for each woman. So this is dedicated to the 14 Montreal martyrs and the 14 times 14 million women more. Let's light a candle. Let's light another candle for old women, rejected wives, and all women powerless and silenced, whose children have forgotten the ones who gave them birth. Let's light a candle. Let's light another candle for childless wives, violated women, and all women scorned whose brothers have forgotten the same mothers they mourned. Let's light a candle. Let's light another candle for women mutilated by parents, battered by partners, all women killed by laws of custom whose families hold sacrosanct such cultural practice. Let's light a candle. Let's light another candle for comfort women, ethnically polluted women, all women brutalized by rape and the sanctions of war, whose states have abandoned them, displaced, seeking refuge. Let's light a candle. Let's light another candle for girl children unmourned in death, oppressed in life, all girl children unborn to life, whose people place no honor in girls. Let's light a candle. Let's light another candle also for warrior women working for women, all females, all feminists, all sisters in spirit. Let's light a candle. Let's light another candle. We haven't got a lot of time, but we would like to hear. This is where two people get to ask a question. Okay, your hand was first. And if yours is the only one, that's fine, and we'll try and answer it and try not to use too much time of the next panel. So please, yes. Because there will be no questions after, okay?
Hi again. It was wonderful. Thank you. My name is Marzia, and I write for the African Women's Writing Project. And I believe to write is to break the taboos. And for me, the biggest fear is to write about some of the taboos. Like for now, my parents don't know about some of my writings, some of my essays and poems. For example, I wrote about my uncle's first wife, who was divorced on their wedding night because she couldn't prove that she was a virgin. And my mother doesn't know about that. And there are many other things I would like to write about, but I'm scared. My question to you is, how did you have the same problem, and how did you overcome of that fear? Thank you.
Speaking for myself, I think we all have that problem. I have one which is very funny, which actually has to do with language. A couple of years ago, a very, very good friend of mine, the great lesbian poet Cheryl Clarke, was retiring from Rutgers. And Cheryl has this ability to use language that I was raised to consider profane. And I've never used the F-U-C-K word in a poem. I wrote one and said it in a poem for her. I think the issue is you really must distinguish, first of all, between writing the poem and performing it. And I say that because sometimes you just need to say it, and it doesn't matter if you're saying it for yourself and nobody sees it. Don't censor, don't kill what you need to work out. So that's the one thing. Write it anyway. Nobody need know, as you know, just write it. How you find the way, I think I'll let somebody else deal with it, but with me, it was to begin with people I trusted, who I knew would understand where this anxiety was coming from. Even, for example, in the case of my father, when I had been afraid of talking to him because a lot of my early poems were about the anxiety of exile. And I didn't want to make him feel bad because it was his fault, that we were in exile. And he understood. People understand more than you think.
There's this quote, I don't know who says it, but it's, on the other side of every fear is freedom. Yes. And that, whenever I'm writing something that terrifies me, and I write a lot about family, and I don't want them to feel shame or to feel vulnerable, but those are stories that I hope, in telling, liberate someone. And so, what does it mean to tell the story of someone in your family, and someone might have that same experience but not be sharing that because of shame? And to carry shame in your body is a slow death. Yes. So what would it look like to release someone from shame? And then thinking about that instead of what are the repercussions for myself. If what I can say can liberate someone, if only one person, then I'm going to say it no matter what. Yeah. And so I think, and Lissa said something, I said, do you ever get nervous? Before you speak, or you get nervous, or you get excited? And she said, it was really meaningful when you're nervous, it's because you're thinking about yourself, and you need to be thinking about the audience. So who's going to hear me? And how is that going to serve them? Instead of what am I going to lose? What are they going to gain? I think that sort of spirit of abundance really helps me not be afraid.
I think I would add to that, too. It's a really real fear, especially depending on where you are. I mean, I know that I've been blessed to feel open and welcome to share things, and to then realize that, there are environments in which it is dangerous to read certain things out loud, and, that's a measurement that you have to take, acknowledging that. But I just so think it's important to acknowledge that difference between writing and sharing, and how important it is to get it on the page, and then to decide who is the person that needs to hear this, and is there someone that needs to hear it that I can read it to in a safe way? Absolutely. I also, though, too, I think that what was stated before about I think especially as women, finding our voices is so important. And I think that was something that I took for granted growing up in an environment where I was given the opportunity to have a voice. As I started to write more, I have a friend, Lewis, who whenever I'm writing a poem, he'll look at me. I'll read the first draft, and he'll look at me, and he'll say, you know what I'm going to say, right? And I'll roll my eyes, and I'll say, you're going to tell me that I need to go deeper. It's gotten to the point where, if I'm not crying as I'm writing a poem, I'm probably not going deep enough, honestly. And so I think that, it's unraveled some pieces of myself that I was keeping really locked away. So I think safety is definitely a concern, and I think that that's so important to recognize. I also think that writing and getting those things out is it's healing work, for sure.
Do you two have anything? All right, I'm going to take the liberty of, we have one more poem each. And thank you for the permission. So, finally, Article 12 says no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his or her. We need to rewrite this declaration. Privacy, family, home, or correspondence, nor to attacks upon their honor and reputation.
This is a compilation of what I heard today, so a lot of people from panels and speakers are going to be quoted in this, but it's a poem that I wrote during the lunch break about what I heard today. I grew in a womb fertile with opportunity, cried my first breaths to a hospital of midwives, women, strong arms around this new wailing body. So what is the world to me other than hopeful? And yet, my body too is battleground for wars started by men. My body too is territory to be contained by public fights against reproductive rights. My body too pays for lessons we failed to learn the last time. She is my sister who is refused education. She, my cousin jailed for finding her voice. She is my oppressor and my mirror. The white feminist who silences her sisters of color, the shoulder pad wearing women CEO who is boxed into the office my voice can no longer reach. She too, the bound, the mutilated, the raped, the silenced, we women who, if not so careful, are part of making and keeping this system. We live under the rule of men, not under the rule of law, she says. And then
the battle cry to be disobedient, but we still search for these answers, silently hope for collective response to atrocity. I, too, am born of this confusion, but where can I stand if not using this body as bridge to speak with these sisters across these generations to crush this system?
Whoa.
So I think a lot about activism, and the new activism that I am pursuing is in the form of radical self-care. And what does it look like if all of the women in the world just said no for a day, just said, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm tired. Or said, you know what, I buy myself sunflowers as often as I can. And so what does your activism look like for you when you take care of yourself because you're in a world that doesn't want you to survive? And so it is activism to survive and to do so joyfully. And so one of my radical activisms is dancing, and dancing however and whenever I want. And there seem to be some people who try to compromise my dance. And so this is a poem for them. In the beginning, there was music and the body, a call and response, a memory, a magic, a sacred script, a body language. Now that is made myth. The call sounds different, and I have no response when men's eyes ride the wave of my body. Hang from every move like an anchor, I become Venus Noire, Sarah Primate, a clown in a false king's court. They will have you believe that a club is no place to belong to yourself. But here I am anyway, trying to manufacture magic out of men who see me as salt shaker, ass clap, twerk team, and pole dance. In this place, built on the business of lonely, my desire has a hand over its mouth. Here, to move is to be made mannequin, pretty, silent, on display. So I have learned to dance like floodwater, make sure that no one wants me, learn to cast no shadows, lest men think any part of me belongs to them. Learned, do not be too brick house, they will want to sleep inside you. Learn, dance with your fists closed, ready to defend your body's honor. Learned, dance with your mouth open, ready to correct them when they call you out your name. Learned, dance with your arms wide, ready to swing. Dance like you are shaking off something unholy because you are. Dance like you are preparing for war. Dance like you deserve it. Dance so that one day they will learn. They will learn that my body is mine here and everywhere else. They will learn that my shimmy and sway is a celebration that belongs to me. They will learn loud music does not mean I will be quiet. They will learn not to interrupt God when she is speaking through my body. They will learn so I won't have to teach my daughters to dance when no one is watching.
I think this poem deserves a preface because it's not always easy for folks to take in certain subjects. About a year ago, I was traveling with a group of students to South Africa, and one of my students had been sexually assaulted before, and she got on stage to do a poem about that. And the DJ played a song right afterwards that sort of mocked her and mocked sexual assault. And it was this moment, right? And I step outside with her and I ask her, like, what do you need? Like, we're going to leave this space. We're going to get everybody and go. And she said, the only thing I need is one of the male mentors. I just need to feel safe. And it was this moment where I had to kind of like take a breath and get her what she needed, right? Because that's what she needed. But also realize that I want to have children one day, and this intense fear that they might not think I can protect them. And this was around the same time when the Amanda Berry story comes out. Relisha Rudd had gone missing. There's just this compilation of women who are disappeared, right? In metaphorically and physically, and just taking that in. And so I will caveat this with saying that I don't know if this poem is politically correct. And that I don't think was my concern or my fear when I wrote it. It's called Spear. It almost curdles my womb dry. These stories. Girl, parties in Steubenville, watch her drink. Watch her pass out. Watch them grab wrists and ankles. She is now a rope they jump. 3 girls, except they're women now. 10 years chained in a Cleveland basement. Did each one give thanks when he skipped her? When he visited the other one? When he got that one full of stillborn baby girl in Gretna, Louisiana, stuffed into a garbage bag? Show me her mother, how she clenches her fists. It seems we women must practice how to lose our daughters, because I know the boys who will help me carry grocery bags, and then will whistle, will whisper, will crook fingers in my daughter's direction, and she may flip her hair, she may buck her hip, she may accept the invitation to chill behind paint chip staircases. The cheap vodka may burn her throat, but not how they will later when they become more thrust than thought, and you can't tell me that they don't know. Her no is not a moan. When she wakes me, her bed puddled in piss, I will scrub these hands raw. I will tremble at what they could not prevent. I have to hold every smile of my future daughter tipped up to the milk of this promise. She will not walk hunched, fingers playing with one another as if she can wring prayers from the sweat between her palms. My daughter will not be a girl forced to turn herself into a corner, taught that her body is a place to huddle, hide. I won't raise her to be nice, to give her laugh away, to smile polite as some men plot and plan to turn her body into a weapon of war. And if they try, she will know how to wield herself. Don't tell me it's wrong to want to raise a child in this kind of fear. I know for every finger that we loosen, another knuckle grows back crooked. Another knuckle is looking to crack into my daughter's skin. And I can't trust this world to teach their sons how to treat my daughter. So I will raise her to be a sword, a spear, a shield, to turn clasped hands into heated hatchet, to hold razors between her teeth, to cut unkind advances with the sharpest eyes, to hold all of this together with leather or lace, to be chiseled, prepared for rebellions against her flesh. My daughter will be carved from hard rock, sharpened shrapnel, a spear, her whole body ready to fling itself and arrow the hand of the first man who tries to cover her mouth.
My last poem, like Jamila's poem, is also inspired by dance, in a sense. It's a poem that I wrote as part of a project called Hope Spoken Broken, and it invited poets from Washington, D.C. to write poems in response to stories from Palestinians in Jabalia refugee camp. So the story I was inspired by was a short piece written by a young woman, Palestine, who was born and raised in Jabalia refugee camp. And her piece that she wrote was about her love of dancing dabke and how she felt that it was so important to her in the camp to make sure that she passed on that knowledge and that tradition to the younger people. And so it inspired this poem. We stomp footprints into dirt, merge our heels with our roots. Like trees planted by the water, we shall not be moved, except by the force of our own feet, delight in our own dances. We ask for what is ours to be returned to us. We remember every heart that has died, broken. We celebrate that we are here, haunted, but healing. We shall not be moved except by the force of our own feet, delight in our own dances. Dabke in Jabalia, Kummi in Jaffna, go-go in DC. Like palpitations underground shift tectonic plates, some have tried with equal force to steal us from our places. This skin is the sun-stained color of soil my grandmother's grandmother walked on, survived on, thrived on. Now soldiers' families settle the ground my people were built on. If we were trees planted by the water, would you hear the lumberjack shout timber to warn you? Get out of the way. The ground beneath your feet is about to shake.
We are all mothers, and we have that fire in us of powerful women whose spirits are so angry we can laugh beauty into life and still make you taste the salt tears of our knowledge, for we are not tortured anymore. We have seen beyond your lies and disguises, and we have mastered the language of words. We have mastered speech. And yes, we have also seen ourselves. We have stripped ourselves raw and naked piece by piece until our flesh lies flayed with blood on our own hands. What terrible thing can you do us, which we have not done to ourselves? What can you tell us, which we didn't deceive ourselves with a long time ago? You cannot know how long we cried until we laughed over the broken pieces of our dreams. Ignorance shattered us into such fragments. We had to unearth ourselves piece by piece to recover with our own hands such unexpected relics. Even we wondered how we could hold such treasure. Yes, we have conceived to force our mutilated hopes into the substance of visions beyond your imaginings, to declare through pain our deliverance. So, do not ask. Do not even ask what it is we are laboring with this time. Dreamers remember their dreams when they are disturbed. And you shall not escape what we will make of the broken pieces of our lives. Thank you. I'd like to I just want to say one word about that poem. It's called Liberation. It's a poem I wrote almost 35 years ago. And I want to, it's a thank you to the generations. I wrote it on the day when I met Nikki Giovanni, Toni Cade Brambara, and Gwendolyn Brooks on the same day. And I couldn't go to sleep. I wrote them. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And we will let you all know the next time we're together.